Arsenal again. Another night, another Champions League knockout loss for Arsenal. And I said in the introduction, it was 1-0 Porto for the record. Another game to come, though. The Brazilian Galeno got the winner right at the death. But was it a case of the better team lost, but the smarter team won? At the end of it, Arteta was disappointed at what he saw, what he perceived to be a lack of aggression from his boys.
We really dominated the game, but we lacked purpose, especially in the first half, to have much more aggression, to break lines, to play forward, to generate much more threat in that back line. In the second half, there were much better things, and we generated a lot of situations without really creating much from it. But we will learn from it. Now it's clear. It's halftime. You want to be in quarterfinals. You have to be your opponent. It's clear, and that will be the purpose and the plan with all our supporters together to do it.
I just wonder, this is the territory, though, that in the past Arsenal have floundered in, Simon. They haven't reached the quarter-final stage since 2009-10.
Yeah.
And they've won the first leg in just one of their last 12 two-legged knockout ties in the competition. All seems to go well until now in the Champions League. I wonder if this time it's going to be different.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think they came up against a very compact and disciplined Porto side whose job was to get an outcome in the first leg. 1-0. If you go in at half-time at 1-0 in any game, do you necessarily think that game is done? No, I don't think Arsenal have anything to particularly worry about. OK, they would have liked to have come away from that game with more than the loss, but 1-0 at half-time is no great disaster. You know,
no shots and targets, Simon.
No, I know, but European football's a different game. You can't argue in the recent weeks that Arsenal have been absolutely on it and across it.
Sure.
Porto are okay. They're third in their league. They're not the greatest world beaters in the world, but they're in the Champions League.
But you wonder why it's different then last night?
Well, I think they were just a tactically well set up side. And I think it will be a different dynamic. In games like that, you've got to get the first goal. And if you get the first goal, you're going to bring the opposition out to play a different way. And they didn't. And they didn't create as much as you'd like to think they would do. I think they'll take something out of the game. They'll pivot from what they did there. The second leg at the Emirates will be a completely different set of affairs. And I don't think there's anything wrong with losing 1-0. Most times in history, when we talk about an away leg in a European competition and a meaningful one like the Champions League, a 1-0 first leg away loss is considered a bit of a win. It's not a disaster. In fact,
well,
it's okay.
I mean, they're still in it. Yeah, the tie's still alive. I get it.
They're more than in it, and I more than expect them to overcome Porto in the second leg, and to go on to the latter stages of the tournament. And I don't think anything should be made much more of it than that.
I wonder if getting rid of the away goals rule has killed this competition a bit.
Well, I never much liked that rule. I mean, I know it's something that's part of tradition, and I never much felt that it was a great rule in the first place.
No, but it gave you incentive to equalise.
Of course it did, but I don't think Arsenal were de-incentivised yesterday. I just don't think they were able to overcome Porto and didn't have the toolkit and the approach that the manager would have wanted them to have. They were better in the second half.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a great performance, but it wasn't a disastrous one either. And bringing them back to Emirates with a 1-0 down half-time, they'll do the job at the Emirates. I'll be surprised if they don't.
You think they'll get through? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I hope they get through, obviously. Joe's a big Arsenal fan. Joe, good morning. You have an audience with myself and Simon Jordan. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Joe. What do you think then? I mean, was it a case of the better team lost, but the smarter team won?
Look, right, don't get me wrong. I think that Arsenal were not up to the standards they should have been. Completely agree with what you were both saying earlier. And I think we will smash them at Emirates. However, I know it's not the topic of conversation, but why do we not address the fact that 4 minutes were added on? It was 0-0, right? 4 minutes were added on at the end for clearly the fact that Porto players were diving all over the place. Why do we never address the fact that the Porto players, there was one of them where we were on the edge of the box, and Ødegaard, I think, made a tackle, and we were clearly going to be through, 3 against 2 on the edge of the box, but he gave a foul because it was on the edge of the box. So if it's in the middle of the pitch, then it wouldn't have been a foul. But they were diving all over the place. Every corner that we had, with 13 corners, 6 of them were given as a foul in the box. But why is that okay? And why does the ref not do anything about it? I don't understand.
Well, maybe that's because the referees have read the script that your manager told everybody, that the referees in Europe are much better than the ones in the Premier League, and didn't feel that they needed to be challenged by it. Maybe that's the part of it.
That's a fair point, Joe, actually. No?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm being facetious, Joe. I'm being facetious about Arteta's observations about the data suggesting that the European referees are much better than the English ones.
Potentially, but I reckon you'll see a difference. I reckon when we come to the Emirates, they won't allow that. They'll just dive on the floor and it won't be given. It'll be a different story.
Joe, why do you think Arsenal will, quotes, annihilate them at the Emirates?
because it's a different atmosphere. I mean, Porto set up really, really well last night, don't get it wrong, but I just think we will. I think we'll come out on top. We know we need to go and more attacking. Like, we could have come away last night with 0-0 and been relatively okay, because it was 1-0. It was a great finish. It's, as Simon said, it's not a lot. It's not the biggest loss, but I think we'll come away and I think we'll smash them at home.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I hope you're right, because I'd like to see Arsenal carry on. Thank you, Joe Gaz, a big Arsenal fan. Gaz, good morning to you. Where do you stand on this? Did you want to see a heck of a lot more from your side last night?
Yeah, hi guys. Great show. First time caller, so appreciate you letting me on.
No problem, Gaz.
I managed to watch a lot of it last night, but I was at the Lons game at home, so I do have a lot of faith. I mean, last night there was absolutely no intent. I don't think they weren't moving the ball quick enough, and I think that shows. Bringing Jorginho on in the second half instead of an Nketiah just shows he's got no faith. So
yeah, Gaz, what do you make of fellow Arsenal fan Joe's observations? A different Joe to the caller. This is Joe who's sending a message. I was expecting Simon to be a lot more critical this morning. We were too negative and toothless. We deserve criticism for our performance. If we can't have a go at Porto away, what happens when we're drawn against the big boys? I kind of go with that sentiment, Gaz. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think they deserve the criticism this morning. But as I say, when I went to Lons, I mean, Porto are probably a bit of a better team than Lons at the moment, but we absolutely annihilated them. I mean, there was 5 different scorers. They got absolutely nowhere near us, and at the end, it was a training game, so that we could have been 6 or 7. So, yeah, they deserve the criticism, but I think when we take them home, I do think we will put 3 or 4 past them.
I think it's fair to say, though, Gaz, Porto are a bit more streetwise than Lons, are they not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get what chance, guys? Guys, before you go, first time caller or not, you've done well. What chance do you give your boys of winning this thing? You haven't done it. You haven't won it. Is this going to be the season?
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, when Partey's back, it brings a bit more depth in that midfield. I think we don't win the midfield battle enough. A lot's on Rice. But yeah, I think that's maybe later on in the tournament when we play the Real Madrids or Man Cities. I think a striker might be our downfall.
Okay, guys, listen, thank you for taking time out to give us a call. Do you know what? Not with the benefit of hindsight now that I've had a few minutes to think about it, I am surprised at you this morning, Simon. I thought you'd be more critical of Arsenal this morning. I mean, you've got to have a tilt at them when you're away from home.
Well, yeah, but I mean, ultimately, it's a two-legged tie, and you're in the business of winning the tie. And it doesn't matter if you win the first game, as long as you don't lose it in a convincing fashion if you're playing away from home. And I think you have to be balanced in your view. You can't just suddenly turn around and go for that instantaneous, gratification of being able to give someone a slamming just because you can. It's a performance that Arsenal will look back on and say, could we have done better? The manager suggested that they didn't approach the game quite the way they would wanted them to approach it. They weren't as aggressive and direct in certain respects as he wanted them to be. Porto are not mugs. They themselves are a leading European side playing in a decent Portuguese league. Yeah. So with all due respect to it, it's easy for me to just play to the gallery and go, "Oh, Arsenal, look at that! Proves that at European level they're toothless." Sure. But I don't. If they were to perform poorly at the Emirates and not overcome it, then by all means, gloves are off. Go in and say, "Wait on a second, this wasn't a difficult tie for you. You want to go deep into it." So I don't think that's a fair observation to just say go piling in just because they've had one sort of average performance. Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.